Hey, hi, hello everyone. Welcome to Global Digital Week. Myself Ankit Rao, and today we'll be talking and exploring about unraveling cloud security posture management for all the public clouds that we are fondly using these days. So before moving ahead, I'll just introduce myself. So as I said, my name is Ankit, and I work as a senior software engineer at Zscaler. So I'm mostly into cloud and cloud security. So I am into this, uh, I'm into this thing of spreading awareness around cloud security and cloud adoption in general. For my efforts, I have been recognized by AWS, that is Amazon Web Services, as a community builder, and these are my social media handles. So if you have any questions around the presentation that we'll be covering today, so you can freely ping me on either my Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll always be happy to answer all your questions. So taking this stage, we'll get started and deep dive into what is cloud, and we'll explore the cloud security aspects, right? So what is the agenda for today? So we'll have a brief overview on what cloud is. We'll have the motivation behind why I'm presenting this session. Then we'll talk around, or maybe to take a deep breath, and we'll talk around cloud security and how it is a shared responsibility model. We'll talk about what cloud security posture management is, and then we have an interesting tool for demo. So we'll be using the Microsoft Azure's Defender for Cloud, wherein we'll see how we can easily set up a cloud security posture management setup for multi-cloud environment involving AWS, GCP, and Azure itself. So in the end, we'll have Q&A. I think the Q&A will not be live, but yeah, as I said, you can surely reach out to me on my social media handles, and I'll be glad to assist. Okay, so we'll get started. So what is cloud? So cloud basically, if you give it a, if in a layman term, if you give it a thought, you'll say that, yeah, that's sky, or maybe the clouds that we see in the sky. But yeah, that's not what it is. So what if I told you it's just someone else's computer that you're using? So the idea of cloud, again, it was the same principle that was being used. So cloud is just like sharing of resources. So when I say sharing, so we'll take a very naive example of, say, electricity. So when you are using electricity, you are getting billed for it, and electricity is shared from a substation to your homes, right? And then based on your usage, you pay for it. Cloud is as simple as that. So in this case, the electricity is replaced by compute or storage or any other service that you use over the internet. And the payment, again, it depends on how much you use it. So if you use a certain database or a compute service for a certain while, you'll be billed accordingly. So that is how cloud work, and that is a very simple or a layman definition of what cloud is. So now so we understood what cloud is. Now we'll talk about the cloud service providers. So now when the notion came up, so Salesforce was the one who came up first with a service that was offering a service over the cloud. So they were the pioneers, and then Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, and all joined in, and they currently form the major public cloud service provider pool. So these are the major public cloud service providers. There are many more, and today what we are going to talk about is, so if you notice here, so we have a very good lock here on all the connections between the internet through which you are accessing the cloud. There are some arrows that I have drawn, and if you see here, there is a lock that I have drawn. So the lock here is indicating security. So the security, when we talk about cloud security, it is within the cloud, it is while you are accessing cloud over the internet. So that is what we'll basically be covering. So this was a very brief. I hope this interests all the audience around, and we'll now actually get started with the cloud security and cloud services. So before moving to security, we'll actually talk about what are the types of cloud computing services that are available in the market. So the most famous service is, like IaaS is there, infrastructure as a cloud. Then there is platform as a service. Then there are software as a service, and then a new term that has recently came up, that is function as a service. So infrastructure as a service, constitutes of the major cloud offerings. So basically all your compute services, your database services that you're using over the internet, they all fall under infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service are all your online code editors and all those stuff. Software as a service is again a very widely used domain. So all the applications that you're using over the internet, like Facebook, your Netflix, and all your shopping apps, they are just a service, that they are just softwares which are using as a service over the internet. So they are all software as a service. And today we'll mainly focus on infrastructure as a service, because AWS, Microsoft Azure, and GCP, their major offerings are into infrastructure services. So we'll talk about fast services as well while covering the security aspects. But the core, you know, the core competency, or maybe the core topic of discussion today, will be around infrastructure as a service. Right. So this was all about cloud. Now, why cloud security, you may ask? Why did I choose to talk about cloud security? So now the biggest security challenge when it comes to the cloud adoption is perception of reduced security. So, we'll take a very simple example of a banking service. So, you say there is a bank who have all their applications, all their customer data hosted in their local, local servers and everything. They know where their data is, so they can physically see the devices therein. So when you ask the bank, the bank authorities that they can migrate to cloud, they can save cost and all the things, the first questions they will ask is, where is my data stored? And is it really secure? Because they can't see the servers and the the racks and everything there physically, because they are now remote and they are accessing it over the internet, right? So this is a very big challenge when it comes to cloud adoption. So that is one thing that I personally try to be in favor of cloud adoption. And due to this reduced perception of cloud security, I just want to spread awareness that implementing cloud security is not as hard as it seems. It is tough, yes, but by following some standard practices and guardrails, you can certainly achieve a decent amount of cloud security, right? And then if you see the public cloud challenges as well, so the number one, as I said, is security. And then the biggest identified cloud threats occur mostly due to misconfiguration of cloud platforms, right? So as I said, when you are trying and using cloud, it's up to you how you use it, right? So the cloud providers are there to provide you services, but then how you configure the service, which service you are keeping private, which you are keeping public, it's all in your hands. We are the ones, the cloud users are the one who actually configure the services, right? But if you see here, the biggest cloud security threat as per a standard data set, so it's due to misconfiguration of the cloud platform. So it's like the basic settings the cloud user is missing, due to which there are some loopholes that the intruders identify and get into the system. So if we can avoid, or maybe configure the cloud platform in such a way that it is following all security best practices, then the chances of threat becomes very less, right? So this is what I am here to spread awareness about and talk about. So that's the motivation behind all of this. Okay. So now we'll actually talk about what cloud security is and why is it a shared responsibility model. So cloud security in very simple terms refers to the technologies, policies, controls, and services that protect the cloud data, application, and infrastructure from threats. So basically, whatever you are using over the internet, it can be any service. So the security of that service or that infrastructure that you are using, that compute, that database, is what cloud security is. And cloud security is a shared responsibility model, and we'll talk about that through this diagram. So if you see here, we'll mostly cover the IaaS aspects. So if you notice, the physical security is owned by the cloud provider. It's marked in gray. Why is it owned by cloud provider? Because when you are using infrastructure as a service, the actual racks, the actual data servers, the actual compute servers, they are all hosted by the by the cloud service providers in their data centers, which can be miles away, which can be in your city as well, obviously, but mostly it's like in data centers of the cloud service providers. So we don't have access to it. So that is why the physical security of all those components is taken care by the cloud provider, right? So we need not worry about it. Second thing is the host infrastructure. So now the host infrastructure as well. So whatever we are hosting on the infrastructure that we are using. So again, that now is a shared responsibility model, because some components are taken care by the cloud service providers, while some by us. Similarly with the network. So even though the network or maybe the connections and everything is managed by the cloud service providers, It is us who need to define rules that over which network that particular component can be accessible. So for example, you can create a virtual machine and keep it open to the internet, right? So now the cloud service provider is streamlining access to the VM through internet because you configured it. But whereas if you follow good guardrails, good security hygiene, what you will do is you will configure the VM such that it is only accessible through a trusted IP source that is known to you, right? So in that case, it will be made sure that the VM will be accessible, the virtual machine will be accessible only through that certain IP and not through anywhere in the world, right? So that is why this is a shared component here. Then the application level controls, IAM related controls, client endpoint and data classification, these are all our responsibility. I mean the cloud user responsibility. And why is that? Because these are the things that we are deploying basically. So the application which you are deploying on the compute instance, that is our application, so we need to make sure of its security. Identity and access management, again, who needs to access that resource over the cloud portal? Again, this is our responsibility because we are managing our users or the users in our organization, right? Same with client endpoint and data classification and accountability, who can access which data and all those stuff. So again, now since cloud provider's job is done, they have provided you with the compute, but then when you have deployed your application, it is generating certain data, the security of that data falls under your responsibility, right? So I hope things are clear here. And now if you see here, why there is more emphasis on cloud adoption in the first place. So think of a startup, right, who are trying to get into a big pool of new budding startups. There is a lot of competition around, and they want to set up their infrastructure. So if they go through the traditional route, that is setting up their own racks, their own network controls and everything, it will take a big team. It will take a decent team, and it will take a lot of time for those guys to actually set up physical compute instances, the network and everything. Third thing is it will cost them as well. So basically the cost of the actual infrastructure, the cost of the people who will set that up, and the people who will maintain that, right? And the time aspect as well. For startups, time is the most important aspect, right? So they want to be in the market first. So the go-to-market thing is very important for them. So what happens if they adopt cloud instead of doing all that stuff? So the actual setup of the hardwares and everything is taken care by the cloud provider. You just need some expert who can work with cloud and just help them configure whatever compute and database and storage requirements the startup has, and then you are done, right? So there is a lot of cost reduction, it increases speed, and that is why here we are talking about cloud adoption, and then why cloud security should not be a barrier in the cloud adoption process. So I hope things are interesting till now. We'll move towards the next aspects. So now we talked a lot of while around the cloud security and terminologies and why cloud security is important. But then you may have a question saying that how we can achieve cloud security. Are there any standards involved which we can just follow and accordingly adopt certain processes and then say that we are compliant with respect to a certain standard? So yes, standards are important because we can't just blindly go and configure things as per our requirement. So there are some guardrails set up, there are some standards which can help you implement cloud security. So what are they? So these are some well-known standards. So like CIS, there is NIST, there is PCI DSS, there is HIPAA, there is SOC 2 and ISO. So all these standards are significant in their own way. So if you if you give a thought, so there are when you talk about the industry that may use cloud, right? So there are various domains in the IT industry. So there may be fintech startups or fintech organizations, there may be healthcare organizations, there may be many service-based normal organizations as well. So these compliance standards are designed specific to that. So if you see HIPAA, so HIPAA is the healthcare standard defined by the US government, I guess, which will give you controls around how healthcare data must be handled, right? So if you are, or maybe if your organization is into a healthcare domain, you can simply go and first make sure that you are HIPAA compliant, right? Same with PCI DSS. So PCI DSS is a fintech standard. So it's the payment card holder information data security standard. That's what it means. So this is related to handling of finance related data. So all your banks or all other fintech startups, right? So if they want to adopt cloud and implement cloud security, they can first follow this benchmark. If they are compliant with respect to that, they are mostly covered on all on all aspects. So this is how cloud compliance standards help us implement cloud security. Okay, so now again, these standards have to be understood by an expert and then implemented. So we still have one problem in hand, that who will help us understand these standards. That will cover in the coming slides, right? So now we know cloud adoption is beneficial, so we are in a quest to adopt cloud, right? Then we found a problem of cloud security, that if we adopt cloud, we have to implement cloud security. That was one problem. We had a partial solution in the way of compliance standards, saying that there are standards specific to a certain domain that is there. So we have a partial solution, but we don't know how do we read those standards, or how do we actually implement those standards and implement cloud security. So now these are what I have listed down. These are the basic challenges involved in implementing cloud security. So first thing is lack of cloud security architecture and strategy. So now with the go to market speed, as I talked about, so there comes the cloud security negligence as well. So in the initial stages, there is a high probability that architects may they may basically neglect some of the security aspects just to increase adoption, because you have to block certain accesses and everything. And in the in the fast-paced development cycle, the blocking accesses becomes a big blocker, and it takes a lot of time for developers to overcome that. So in the initial stages, there is a high negligence of security. So that is one thing. Second thing about implementing cloud security is a very important point, that the nature of cloud is distributed and ever changing. So as we talked about earlier, we can't see where our data is getting stored. It's in some data center, but we have not actually seen it. So, and it's very distributed. It's distributed across the globe, and it's ever changing. So we don't know where our data is flowing. So that's another challenge. Third is lack of personal experience in cloud security measures. So as I said, we now have the standards as well, the compliance standards like CIS, HIPAA, and others. But we need someone who understands those standards and help us implement them in our architecture. And then as I said, the compliance and regulations. So we need someone who can help us implement those standards into our architecture, right? So these are the standards, these are the challenges currently that we have in place. So after the adoption and learning about cloud security and the standards, we are now having a major problem, that how do we actually go ahead and implement cloud security with all those challenges involved, right? So now here comes our solution. It's just a terminology for now, but here is the solution for implementing cloud security. So it's called as cloud security posture management, and it's defined by Gartner as a continuous process of cloud security improvement and adaptation to reduce the likelihood of a successful attack. So now if you see, the word continuous here is very important because of the ever-changing nature of cloud. So it has to be a continuous process, that monitoring of whatever changes are there that is happening in your cloud environment, and then adaptation to it, which will help us reduce the likelihood of a successful attack, right? This unique nature of cloud requires a new security concept that can address the distributed and constantly changing cloud infrastructure, right? So now what CSPM is helping us with is, so it's helping us develop and enforce end-to-end security policies, first thing. Second thing is risk and vulnerability assessment and visualization. So it will help us assessing various risks that are there in our existing infrastructure, the vulnerabilities that may have arisen. And then it will help us with the compliance monitoring, incident response, and DevOps integration. So three basic steps. First thing is enforcing security policies, identifying risk, and then mapping it with compliance standards. So if you are, as I said, as we talked, right, if you are into a certain domain like fintech or healthcare, you would like to be compliant with respect to a certain standard. So CSPM will also help us with that, right? So we talked about CSPM now. So how do we achieve CSPM again? So that was just a terminology. But now here we have the solution. So this is the solution that we have to it. It's Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So Azure, in its answer to implementing cloud security, came up with this service in its old cloud console, which was aimed at implementing CSPM for Azure subscription itself. But as and when it time passed, and the trend of multi-cloud came up, Microsoft understood that it's not about one cloud these days. People are like trying to make use of best feature of each, so best features of each, and they are working on multi-cloud setups. So accordingly, Microsoft introduced integration of AWS accounts and Google Cloud accounts as well in the Defender, right? So now we'll just have a brief on what Defender does. So it's a tool for security posture management. So the answer to our cloud security question, that how do we implement it, we'll be demoing it through Microsoft Defender for Cloud. It will protect your workloads running in Azure, hybrid, and other cloud platforms, as we said, and then provides the tools needed to harden your resources, track your security posture, protect against cyber attacks, and streamline security management, right? So these are the basic principles of CSPM. So here we have the solution with Microsoft Defender to implement cloud security, right? So I hope things are good. And now is when we'll talk about the Defender features. So Defender basically fills the three vital needs that CSPM has stated. So it will continuously assess, it will secure, and it will defend as well. So what does continuously assess mean? So since the infrastructure that you are using on Azure, it will change based on whatever configuration changes you do, or maybe the network flow and everything. So Defender will help you track and monitor all those changes that are happening. So that's how it's continuously assessing. It will help you with the vulnerability. It will give you a centralized view of all the resources in your cloud subscription or an AWS account or a GCP account. It will give you compliance mapping, right? So a very important challenge that we had in implementing cloud security was understanding compliance. But now what Microsoft Defender will do is they'll map all the compliance standards with easy to understand security rules, which we just need to follow. They'll give you all the details that how to follow that rule. So basically, taking off all the burden from your shoulders, and you just need to follow what steps have been simplified and provided to you through the Defender, right? Then it is securing through security recommendations. It will come up with the continuous recommendations. So just for an example of security recommendation, so if you have a storage account in Azure subscription and it's not encrypted, so Defender will come up with a recommendation saying that ensure that all your storage accounts are encrypted, and it will list all the storage account in your subscriptions, tell you which of those are encrypted and which of them are not. So suppose you have 5 storage accounts and 3 are encrypted, 2 are not, so it will say 2 out of 5 failed resources, so which needs some action from your end. It will provide you the steps of what actions need to be taken, and that's how it works. We'll go through that in the demo as well in the details. And then it will help you defend. So it will help you defend by use of security alerts. So you can have all these alerts set up, and you can redirect them to your security team via email or Slack integration, so that your security team or your infrastructure team are aware of whatever security alerts are getting generated in Defender. The second thing you can do is you can implement auto remediation. So basically, if they found that some of the resources are not following security hygiene, you can have logic apps, or you can have Azure policy to actually go ahead and configure that security setting. So these are very detailed aspects. Today what we'll do is we'll cover how Microsoft Defender is helping you with a CSPM view. That is they have your centralized view where you can see all your resources, you can see your cloud health, and at least get started with implementing cloud security. Okay, so I think that's a lot of talking. We'll proceed towards the demo. Okay, so here I am on the Microsoft Defender for Cloud portal. So I'll just okay, so if you can see my screen, so I am on my Azure portal. So if for navigating to the Defender, you just need to search for Microsoft Defender for Cloud in your favorites, or you can just search it in the search bar, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I just type Defender, and here it comes. Okay, so I'm on the same screen, so I'll not do anything else. So first thing is you'll ask how do we set up this. So it's very simple. So you just go to the environment settings. Okay, you have the add environment option here, so you can add. So now this is for your third party or hybrid or other cloud providers. So you can add your Amazon Web Services account from here. It will ask for a connector name, and here it will be making use of the IAM roles in AWS account. So IAM roles are basically designated for providing access to AWS accounts in a secure way. With the help of IAM role, you can generate temporary credentials which can be used for scanning and everything, right? Same with the GCP. So you'll have to create a service account and move on. Okay. So now if you see here, we have 65 subscriptions, one AWS account, two GCP project, and one GitHub connector as well. So GitHub and Azure DevOps are new integrations that have been recently launched. We'll not be talking much about them. But yeah, this is how simple the setup is. Okay. Okay, so now so we'll move ahead on the very basic aspects of, just 1 minute. Okay, so now we'll move with the very basic aspects of the Defender. So the first thing that we learned about implementing cloud security is the visibility of the cloud services that you're using. So if you want to implement security, you need to know how many resources is being used for your application. What are the number of VMs or computer storages that are getting used. So the inventory, what it will do is it will tell you, what are the how many number of resources are there in your subscription, or maybe your AWS account or your Azure subscription, right? So this is how it works. So for example, if you see here, I'll have to basically zoom out for some reasons. So if you see here, this is the total resources that are spanning across my Azure subscription, and these are the storage account listed. There are different types of resources that will get listed. So there are 16 pages. So if you see here, there are key vaults, there are VMs and whatnot. So these are the number of services that are existing in my account. And if you notice here, each resource has a graph sort of a thing here. So it will indicate, if there are any recommendations for that particular service or not. So I'll just navigate through some of the storage account and check what it actually does. So if you see here, it is talking about all the security rules that are associated to it. So like secure transfer to storage account should be enabled. Storage account should use a private link connection. And each of that rule has a severity based on how, if you don't configure that setting, how much at risk you are. So based on that severity is higher or lower. So these are very low level security rules that they have set up. And if you notice, they are very easy to understand. So secure transfer to a storage account should be enabled. If you click on that, they'll give you what the description is, what it actually means. So I'll just zoom in here. So it means that secure transfer is an option that it will tell you what secure transfer is. It will give you details about the remediation steps, that how you can remediate that. So it will tell you to go to a particular storage account configuration page and then enable secure transfer required. And there is some quick fix logic as well that you can add. So if you see here, if I click on that, what it is telling is you just need to add this property in your ARM template or whatever deployment template that you're using. And then this setting will automatically be enabled. So if you see here, there is a trigger logic app option as well. So when I said we can auto remediate things, so this is what I was talking about. So you can trigger a logic app based on an event. So if you receive an event saying that secure transfer is disabled for some of the storage account, you can just trigger a logic app and then enable secure transfer on that storage account, right? So similarly, we'll go with say some virtual machine. Okay, so here as well there are a lot of security rules, right? So currently we'll maybe go through one of the rules which are unhealthy. or maybe we'll see some Hindi. So now what it says is management ports should be closed on your virtual machine. So it should not be open to internet is what it is trying to say. So again, it will have the description and the remediation steps of how to basically remediate things or implement that security measure. All right. So this is all about the inventory. This will give you a view of all the resources in your whatever you are using over the cloud. So basically you will have a centralized view, and then you can accordingly plan to implement the security measures based on the priority. Right. The second thing we are going to cover is the regulatory compliance. So which we talked about and which may be a little harder to understand. So if you see here, Microsoft Defender provides integration with all these security standards like ISO, NIST, there is HIPAA, there is CIS as well, all the benchmarks that we talked about. Now, if you go to the actual documentation of these standards, as I said, it's very difficult to understand. But here, if you notice, so I'll just go to say HIPAA. Okay, let it load. Okay, so if you go here, so these are the rules that these are the sections that HIPAA has defined. But if you expand it, if you see here, you expand it and just go ahead. Right, so if you just expand the actual controls and then scroll through it, you will find that there are very easy to understand security rules that are defined. They are just mapped under the particular compliance standard. So if you see here, security accounts should use a virtual network service endpoint. So this, any cloud user who is working with storage accounts will know how to set up a virtual network service endpoint for a storage account. So once you do this control of the HIPAA compliance will become green, and you can at least say that, yeah, your infrastructure is compliant to HIPAA. Similarly with others, so you can just navigate to say NIST, Azure or CIS or PCI DSS, navigate through each and every compliance standard, and then check if you are compliant with respect to that or not. Okay, so this is how simple it is to use Microsoft Defender. And then again, if you see here, we'll just go through one more policy which says that ensure that multi-factor authentication is enabled for privileged users. So now if you, when you are using all these services these days, or maybe the SaaS applications as well, MFA has become a very integral part to ensure two-level, double-level security, because there are a lot of, account takeovers and everything happening. So this again is a similar policy on the same lines, which says that all accounts on the subscription should have MFA enabled. So it will list which are the unhealthy resources. So this subscription does not have that setting enabled. So it will describe what this setting is about. It will talk about how to enable MFA on that. So once you enable it, so this unhealthy resource will go into the healthy part, and then this control, this security control will become green. So it will basically increase your compliance score. So all these reds will become green. So this is how you can accordingly plan. So you can just come to this Defender portal, get a centralized view, go through the compliance standard that you are interested in, check for the controls that are associated with all the resources that you have, and prioritize one by one, configuring and remediating those resources. Once you do that, you can be confident that you have followed most of the security measures, and you can at least get started on the journey of cloud security, right? So this doesn't guarantee that this is 100% secure, but yeah, it will reduce the attack surface, and it will always help you in the journey of attaining cloud security and cloud hygiene, right? So this was all about the short demo that we had. There are many other things to explore, but yeah, we'll maybe if given a chance, we'll have a elongated session or an extended session wherein we'll discuss other capabilities of Microsoft Defender. Right, so we'll just have a brief overview of what findings are provided. So Defender will provide you findings related to lack of encryption on databases and storage account, application traffic, which data in transit and data at rest encryption related findings will be provided. It will provide you improper encryption key management, such as not rotating keys, over liberal account permissions. It will talk about MFA that we saw. It will talk about or give you a view about misconfigured network security, data or compute exposed directly to the internet, then logging not turned on, and all vulnerability related assessment, OS baseline misconfiguration, and alerting. So all the data that you require for implementing cloud security, that is what Microsoft Defender is providing. Right. So we talked a lot about cloud, we talked a lot about security, and then actually how we can get started on the journey. But Defender 2 has its limitations, but it's good to start, but still it still has limitations. So it is still in the it's still in the initial phases. It's a security is not a constant thing. It's a ever changing thing, and we need to be up to date with whatever security loopholes are coming up, right? So Microsoft Defender is still evolving, and there is a good room for improvement around the coverage of more security practices, right? This is one thing. Second thing is there is no on-demand scan facility yet. So the results that you saw on the Microsoft Defender portal, they are basically the change feed is detected maybe every 12 to 24 hours. That's what the documentation says. So there is no scan button that you can say. So suppose you remediated certain storage account and enabled encryption, and you want to see if that policy is now green. You can't see it immediately. It will automatically happen after 12 to 24 hours. So there is no rescan button which will immediately scan your resources again post you apply the security fixes. So that is still a feature that can be added. The alert mechanism is expected to improve over time. So we didn't talk about alerts much, but we can just quickly go through if you have time. So if you see here, there are security alerts as well. I have just generated some sample alerts. So these are the type of alerts that you can get. So suspicious authentication activity, it will have description, and it will have details of the affected resources, right? So which resource this virtual machine is affected, and you can send these details to your security team. So these are the kind of alerts that currently Microsoft Defender supports. But yeah, there is still a lot of room, and there is a lot of room for improvement in that space as well. So, and Azure is using, I guess, Sentinel in the background, and there are some ML algorithms that they have implemented. So they'll actually get better over time when they'll have more data points to relate to security threats, and then accordingly send alerts or maybe generate findings for the user, right? So there is a little price involved as well. So if you are using a certain service, so this is a basic screenshot of the pricing page of Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You can find it on the pricing page itself. So it's quite fairly priced, and recently I noticed that there have been a reduction in price of Defender for Cloud and all the offerings that it is there. So which is a good thing, right? So these are the reference links. So I guess if the team shares this presentation, they'll have access to these links as well. So for any Q&A, as I said in the start, you can reach out to me on my social media handles, and this is my LinkedIn profile. You can scan, and I'm always glad to connect and talk about cloud and cloud security in general. So yeah, that's it. So in the end, I would like to thank the Global Digital Week team for providing me with this opportunity, and I hope the audience had a good time and they learned something out of this small session or the small talk that we had, and I hope it will actually help them start with their cloud and cloud security journey. So thanks a lot again, and hope to see you guys all again. Thank you.